My name is Christina. I'm Consuelo. I'm the executive director here at La Peña. My colleague Christina is a development director. And La Peña has been a place that has been around for 50 years. And it's kind of like a hub that creates a sense of belonging and home for people who are really very hard seeking for it. We work with immigration communities and diasporic communities who have been forced out of their home most of the time under very violent circumstances, or based off of like historical political circumstances that we as La Peña have been directly fighting back against or opposing. And this is a place for people to feel that they, even if they're here against their will, they can find a piece of who they are. They can understand how to create a life here that makes sense for them. And that, makes the community at large better, makes allies understand better how to be allies, makes people who are just curious about cultural, performances or art in general or music to see how all these things like coexist here in a place that is so rich and so diverse that sometimes it can be hard to not replicate harmful behaviors when you don't understand who's your neighbor, who do they come from, like what do they like, what has been their history. So La Peña is a place to understand all of that, to understand the nuances of that, and to bring that knowledge to the new generations. Like, we love being a place that is intergenerational at its core. We love having kids here running around, like learning by osmosis, kind of like what solidarity looks like, what why art is so much more profound than just aesthetics or making the world more beautiful. It's about making the world a better place and fairer and better for everybody to live here. So that's my take on why La Peña should,
Yeah, and you probably talk about it all the time as development director. So what is your main pitch about why La Peña is special, unique, and people should support it?
I think, to just echo everything Consuelo said, one thing that is really special to me is the intergenerational and intercultural aspect of the art and solidarity work that we do. So I think many people might know us as a Latino cultural center, and that's how I think we were founded in our, the organization's history. It was celebrating and uplifting Latin American and diasporic cultures. But also at its heart, I think being an organization that was born out of people who were fleeing political exile in the early 1970s, coming to the Bay Area, really created a spark for folks who were seeking home across really progressive grassroots political movements at that time. So we have, as an organization, been doing solidarity work intersectionally for decades. And we have intergenerational connections across all of those movements. And we're talking the American Indian movement, Black Panthers, Jewish Voice for Peace, more recently Palestinian Youth Movement. And that intergenerational wisdom and knowledge is really powerful. And actually one of the most exciting things that we are really learning about ourselves and pitching right now as an organization is the archives that we're sitting in right now. So not only are we a place that keeps and uplifts these cultural practices and voices, but we're also a center for knowledge sharing. And so we're trying to do that by creating, maintaining, and sharing out all of the knowledge and information that's been held here over the last 50 years.
It's incredible. Can you give an example of the solidarity organizing that you've done, maybe like a story?
Ooh, one story. This is like when you ask what's your favorite movie and you can't think of any movie. I'm very proud of how we've been facilitating space for Palestinian youth movement since 2018. Way before that, we have a long history with Palestinian activists and community members. But I think in these past 2 years in particular, I've seen very young people being so empowered by utilizing the space. The way that we model that is that we just give them full reign of how to utilize the space in any way, shape, or form they need, as long as our calendar permits, for free, obviously. So we orient them, we train them, we give them any type of support that it's needed, from anything production, logistical, cultural, political, and the just emotional support of being hey, we're here for you. And they've had they started very small with kind of core meetings, and the last events that they've had here have held 250, 100 people that are not just like sharing their own experiences about what's happening in Palestine and how that can, you know, resonate with the action that we do here, but also like very much kind of taking knowledge from their predecessors and like really strategizing around what is the thing that we can do right now, right here, that creates, you know, an impact on the other side of the world. And seeing like students thinking in those terms, it has been like a really, it's like, yes, we provide the physical space, but it also feels like this building has held so much history that people who come here in those terms, they see it, they feel it, and it feels like there's already knowledge to be kind of taken from our mural. And, you know, like, and that's how like this kind of intersectionality that Christina is talking about happens so organically when like, yes, this is, you know, a group of activists that are part of a coalition. That doesn't mean that those are the only people here. Like they know and they meet other people that have been connected to La Peña while they're doing their work. And that's how they learn different tips, different approaches, different ways that things have been done, different things that maybe things could be done. And that's just by us just saying like, yes, come here, you can stay here. And that's not trivial. Like that's a really hard thing to make possible when we're like a small teeny tiny team, always, you know, fundraising and having to like go through the tribulations of just being a cultural space in this hostile environment, even without talking about administration or, you know, it's really like multiplying the opportunities for people to learn their own power and agency in how they can create a life that makes sense for them. So yeah, youth for me has been particularly inspiring these days.
You have one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about just the through line that you can draw in particular with solidarity work that La Peña has done with indigenous rights groups throughout its history, and, you know, particularly here in the Bay Area. So some great organizational history. We were, for many years, the site of the breakfast, I believe, that would happen following the sunrise gathering out on Alcatraz. And so after that ceremony, participants would gather here to just be in community with one another, you know, share a meal and sort of partake in that moment. And I really think you can draw a through line from that to in 2015, fixing when the Shumi land tax.
I don't know the year.
Around 2015-16, Sogarete Land Trust publicly launched the Shumi land tax here at La Peña, and we've been in really close collaboration with them almost ever since. You know, with Ariel Lucky hosting Thanks Taken each year, right? A sort of like anti-Thanksgiving or like re-envisioning, like decolonizing our understanding of that like national holiday. And I think it's just been really beautiful to see again, the intergenerational you know, connections and the alliances that are built in that space. And in terms of current or more recent coalition building solidarity work, I've been really inspired by seeing our old guard coming together. I know, so it's basically our organizational founders, or our longtime members, people who actually founded the organization back in the 70s, have been inspired, I think, both in the context in which we're living, but also in the moment of just, you know, programming that's come back into the space and just, you know, feeling like reconnected and energized. They've come back into the space to begin organizing themselves once again as now a community of like mostly retired folks, professionals, to, you know, become educated from like younger folks, like younger activists, bringing in experts in different areas each week. And that's really spun off into a lot of tangible actions and efforts on that on their end. I mean, that's really how the immigration Know Your Rights trainings were started earlier this year. It's how they have organized themselves to participate in marches, organizing, I guess, like crowdfunding campaigns for different causes, and really just educating themselves. And I think in that process also teaching us, right, that sort of spirit of constant openness and like knowledge sharing, and you know, being willing to put yourself out there and be imperfect and build those bridges. It's been really beautiful for us to see as a younger staff.
Yeah, that has been wonderful, volunteering so much of their time, and like doing that gap that as a cultural center sometimes is really hard to, like, I think La Peña has kind of been hitting the cultural part, like the envisioning the future part that is like conceptual and artistic and exciting and creative, and also that part that is, hey, there's harm happening right now that we need to block, that we need to stop, like the direct service part of it, the more political, like grassroots, like today's organizing, that I think they have filled that gap in a beautiful way when, you know, there's so much urgency around. We just need so many hands and so many, like, they're generous hearts. Like they just keep saying, we have the time and, you know, we want to use it. So yeah, it's been wonderful.
That's great. And can you share a little bit more about what happened in the beginning with some of those founders, like a story of how they came together and why they decided to create the community center?
Yeah, so the co-founders, I think, was a group of 7. I hope they don't kill me if I'm missing someone. But it's mostly were folks that, you know, back in the late 60s and particularly in 1970, they were very much aware of what was happening in Chile, because in 1970, the first socialist president democratically elected was elected in Chile, Salvador Allende, right? So that was the first moment in the history of the world where a socialist Marxist government was democratically elected and kind of offered an alternative, a different narrative to what, you know, globally was happening, was that, you know, Marxist or socialist governments were always authoritarian, right? Like this was a completely different story.
Peak Cold War context.
Yes, this was exactly. So folks here that, you know, this is also, I mean, the 60s and 70s times of like, you know, anti-Vietnam War and like all the Summer of Love and like all these like different revolutionary movements, saw Chile as a very interesting example. And folks that founded La Peña a little later had gone to Chile, most of them, as students, as like very young folks, for 6 months, for a year, for a couple months, trying to be part of this new socialist, like what is happening? Like I want to be part of that.
And these were mostly white American like allies, right? Like people who are going there to like learn. Maybe they were students at Cal. A lot of folks that were there on Fulbright.
Exactly.
But
and also some immigrants like Paul Chang.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? But yes, like basically, yeah, people who have been born in America, in the United States, and were like, yeah, really kind of politically, conceptually curious about what was happening there. And then in 1973, the coup happened, right? Like US-backed and sponsored coup that started a 17-year dictatorship. I think the co-founders of Peña were not there when that happened. I think each of them have their unique stories, but basically they were like, okay, people are gonna come here under, like, against their will. There's a war that we need to stop.
Political refugees.
Yeah, political refugees, ex-political prisoners, most of them with very tough stories of torture and you know, losing their loved ones and losing their families, and they were just called to provide some solace to those people. And so yeah, I think the origin was like the space didn't exist, right? So they would just gather informally in their houses and like talk about like, okay, how to do, you know, boycott campaigns and how to fundraise and bring that money to people who were fighting against the dictatorship, like on the streets. And then yeah, this space just happened to be an old restaurant that was kind of being abandoned, and the building was being sold. And yeah, they took the opportunity. I'm pretty sure like it was not as simple as I'm saying, but you know, fast forward, this was the hub that like exiles that would come to the US would learn about La Peña and come exactly to Berkeley because of that, like from all the states, a lot of them from New York. But
yeah. And so I think if I could just add on to that, one thing that makes La Peña really special, made it really special in that historical moment and makes it still really special now, is that I think the piece in that intervening period between like 1970 and 73, when Allende's administration was in power, there was that administration came into power and was supported by this whole movement of artists and creatives and thinkers, intellectuals, a lot of whom were part of this Nueva Canción or New Song movement. And it was these artists that really kind of galvanized people to support this new administration, and really like going back to kind of like, you know, folk revival here in the U.S. and other parts of the world, like going back to like the people's music and the people's history and roots, and like reimagining that for their present, you know, political like class and like union labor struggles. And so as part of that movement, there were these peñas that were organized by you know, famous Chilean folklorists like Vila Taparra, Victor Jara. These are some of the people who are featured on the murals outside and downstairs. So those more informal, creative, artistic gathering spaces were actually really central to organizing that, you know, support for that administration, and really became a template for, I think, how the founders envisioned this space. And so in some ways, you know, you can look at this organization as a continuation of those similar types of peñas, and the sort of countercultural creative resistance. And yeah, I mean, we're the inheritors of that legacy, because all of those artists were either killed or exiled during the Pinochet years. And so we take that legacy very seriously, and we're also trying to carry it forward with joy and hope and possibility.
Speaking of carrying it forward, what would you say is like a 5 to 10 year vision of where things are headed?
Ooh. Ooh. Well, I don't know how to politically correct answer that.
Well, we just hit 50 years, so I think we have done a lot of that, like looking back and celebrating and honoring our elders. But I think that for me at least, like my vision for the next 5-10 years, I mean, like Consuelo always says, like La Peña is a school. I mean, it's a peña, it's a place for gathering and celebrating, but it's a place where people in some capacity come to learn, whether that be through our roots arts classes, or through our salsa bachata merengue classes, or learning through these Know Your Rights trainings, or the film screenings or public panels. There's some sort of informal like public learning and knowledge sharing that's going on. And so I really hope that we can begin to formalize that a little bit more, and really, you know, I think we've centered ourselves mostly as a performing arts center, and that, you know, like knowledge, like skill sharing kind of just happens organically. But I would really love to see, especially, you know, making use of all the rich archives that we have here, being able to, you know, keep working to like document and digitize and preserve all the intangible things that are going on here, and just being able to share that out more widely, either via, you know, just our archival digital collections, hosting like panels, webinar sessions. Essentially, you know, reimagining ourselves not just as a performing arts center, but also as a teaching and learning center for organizers and artists.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with that, and I think that we are also in a very pivotal moment as an organization when you hit 50 years old and you still have your co-founders very much involved and active, who are in their 70s and 80s, you know. And the staff now, I think our average is probably 32 years old. Where that means that transition to a different generation is literally happening every single day as we speak, because it's needed, right? And I think what I envision is for sure like this educational kind of core, like people come to learn, even if they come to a party, they learn by accessing folks that otherwise they would never talk to, or they would not, you know, like conversations that happen here are very sometimes unlikely conversations that just happen because people like trust that folks who are La Peña are, you know, respectful of each other, are understanding of a base of, hey, we're all, you know, valuable as human beings. We're all like understanding that our differences are part of our strength, and we want to like be curious about that. And I think we're living in a world where curiosity is very rare. We rather just like, you know, paint a picture very quickly and like, oh, this person is this other person is this group is that. I think La Peña has like provided that space for like complicating that a little bit more. I'm like, hey, you know, like you may think this about the Cuban community or the Puerto Rican community or the Mexican community. Actually, we are also questioning, what does that even mean? Like, are those labels that mean anything in a way that is meaningful for actually creating relationships that can build coalition in a better world, right? And that is the core of education. Like, I think to me this is the best non-academic knowledge sharing space that you can find, where you're not really learning because of a paper or a lecture, but you're like kind of changing your behavior and your ways of like, oh, I would have thought this is a little weird, but yeah, no, I see it now. Oh, and it happens to be beautiful. Oh, and this music, actually, I really like it. I don't understand the lyrics. Why don't I start learning to understand the lyrics better? And then you see that 2 months later, that person is actually playing the guitar on the jam with, with music that 2 months before they had no idea that it existed. So I agree. I think there's like, we want to really focus on that intergenerational clash of types of ways of doing things and ways of understanding each other that I think we can all learn from, so we don't get stuck in like, cultural trends or like what seems to be the language today that maybe young folks use and old folks don't understand. Like we try to build those bridges, and I think we are very uniquely positioned to do that really well.
And one thing that interests me around building bridges is you have an audience that's both like immigrants and probably mostly Spanish speakers, and then you also have a completely different audience that's probably like highly educated folks coming like to be entertained, and it's unique to have one space that's actually for both or more than that audiences. Can you speak a little to how you do that? How do you welcome so many different types?
I think it's
so much to
it's
say.
a great question. I mean, we have so many different audiences, and you're right that I think it's really been I think intentional on our part, trying to cultivate all these different spaces. I think as you said, there's some spaces that are younger, maybe this dance party caters more to like a certain cultural community, or maybe this event, like the old guard caters to like an older demographic. And I think our vision is to keep creating more opportunities for those groups to come together. And I think Baila is a really good example of this party that was founded by one of our dear colleagues, really in the wake of the pandemic, as a space to not just come and like gather and like learn how to. I mean, it opens with the all levels salsa and bachata classes. So not just to come and like learn how to dance, but really to learn and like refresh ourselves after like the years of isolation that we went through. How do we be in community with one another, and in the process, how do we deconstruct some of the preconceived ideas of like what these spaces are? And by that I mean like the kind of patriarchal, like heteronormative, pieces that go into Latin dance spaces and a lot of Latin music. And it's done, I think, in a really like soft and loving way. And we've seen the results in that it's bringing in like not just the like younger demographics, like college students or other folks who hadn't been to La Peña from other programs, but also like our older folks are coming in. I think like this older Chilean community that, like, correct me if I'm wrong, they probably didn't have a huge interest in salsa beforehand, but now they're like, oh yes, like I'm at Baila every single month, and they have a great time.
Yeah.
And it's actually this really radical, beautiful thing, because it's just creating that safe, celebratory environment for people to be in community with one another, around a shared set of values, but also like around a shared experience and like sense of joy, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the, like, if I can say, like a very basic strategy that we use before being the director, I was in charge of the programming. So something that we would always do with my colleague, my production manager, was like, let's make sure that every program that we have full control over has elements for at least 3 different groups of people. So like, yeah, you can do a film screening with a, wonderful documentary about a very niche, incredible story of, resistance in Salvador. And then, okay, how do we incorporate someone who is not Salvadorian, who doesn't know anything about this, who maybe prefers fiction over documentary, and who just really want to like hang out and maybe is kind of curious, but is not going to commit to 3 hours of like, like this more rigorous informational, okay, let's have free food. Let's start with music. Let's end that with a party. Let's have a dinner at Los Cilantros after. Like, how do we incorporate elements of like, hey, you're not just here if you are interested in this particular thing, or if you are a dancer, or if you are a nerd, or if you are a, historian. Like, let's just make sure that everybody can feel comfortable. And I think now we're also incorporating way more, like always having a room for kids, like with not only toys and but like someone that can do a kids program while something is happening in the theater, so parents can come. Like that's very basic. Like we live in a place that, you know, where life is so, we're like, it's such a rich area, and at the same time it's so precarious. We're like, if there's a family of 4, you don't know if everybody can come, right? Like we have to make sure that this place is accessible, not only like checking the basic boxes, but actually thinking about who are the people that we want to have in the space and how to facilitate that in a very real, concrete way. And that's how I think people who come to one event and they see all of that, they're like, oh, and then they come to a completely different event the month after. And that's a good sign. It's like, okay, you believe that La Peña can hold all of that for you. It's not just the place where you go to one particular thing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting and powerful what you're talking about, partly because the Bay is increasing hugely in its inequalities, and it could be a world where, quote, gentrifiers never ever speak with impacted community, and they're completely living on different tracks, which is often, but it seems like here there's a chance they could interact and break down some of those bridges, and then people with resources could contribute back and maybe counter some of the negative impacts of like the housing market and segregation. So I don't know if you've seen that, but that's just something that comes to mind that we think about in the Blue Heart community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you bring that up. I think it's something that we've thought a lot about in terms of our programming and making that accessible, and you know, being a center that tries to create you know, low cost, free and or affordable like spaces, either through, you know, like ticket sales or just like accessing the space for their own projects and organizing. It would be interesting to do a donor survey, right? I think a lot of our like higher net worth donors are probably donating to La Peña for some of those specific, or supporting La Peña for some of those reasons. But I do think, you know, cultivating a little bit more of a meaningful dialogue around some of those issues could be really important as well. I think also just coming into a moment in which we're like resettling into our physical space, our political realities, creating more opportunities for those communities to be in dialogue. Yeah. And I think it's happening in certain spaces, but maybe formalizing it.
Yeah, no, that is really good food for thought.
Yeah, let's talk. So speaking of funding, how does a place like this survive and keep going? Like
skin of our teeth, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You know the drill.
And you're a Blue Heart grantee because you're under $1 million annual budget, and you do so much with that. So can you share a little bit about how the funding works, and how are you surviving, and how are you even adding a staff member?
You want me to take that one, or do you?
All you, baby.
We are learning as we go. We are coming into these, both of us are coming into these roles following you know, prior lives and careers as artists and academics, with a lot of love and passion for I think the creative side of things. And at least in like my first year on the job, we hit a financial cliff that I think a lot of orgs did following the ending of COVID relief funding. So like end of 2023, a lot of the COVID relief grants just kind of cycled out at the same time that philanthropy was kind of waning. And yeah, to answer your question, we've always operated through a combination of, you know, ticket sales to events that earned revenue, and then grants and individual donors. But really, we're relying heavily on grants because our grassroots donor base, it's a pretty lower median income demographic, right? Like we don't have this huge high net worth donor base that a lot of other organizations do. And so when those grants kind of cliffed, it was, we faced this huge deficit last year, and Consuelo kicked ass, as, you know, long story short, rallied the community, and I think the biggest push was to get some relief funding from the city of Berkeley, like a one-time grant that stabilized us and got us to a place where now we're on much better footing. We've like re-secured a couple of major foundation funders. I think in reconnecting with our old guard, also reconnected with folks who have access to you know, income that they want to redistribute, right? Like we've reconnected with a somewhat higher tier donor pool. And so our goal for the future is to just try and like keep building that out, and also connecting with donors who are like maybe a little bit younger, maybe not folks who are like our direct audience members, but folks who want to like do that work of wealth redistribution, like contribute to their communities, and like be participants in a meaningful way with this creative coalition building space that's local in scope, in that like we're really rooted here in our little like South Berkeley community, but we have ties all over the world.
Yeah, very well said. I think I don't have a lot to add to that. It's like more than 60% of our budget comes from grants, and that is something that we're very grateful for. We are in very good relationship with a lot of our program officers, and they really understand the work that we do, and we have history with them. But I think something that Christina is really amazing at, and we're trying to really focus there, is to be very strategic about what are the relationships that we really want to spend the time to cultivate, what are the conversations that we really want to push forward, and how to be agents in that table, kind of move away a little bit from that model of philanthropy where we're kind of just pretty please give us a little bit of money.
Yeah, really moving towards trust-based philanthropy.
Exactly.
And feeling empowered ourselves to ask for what we need for.
Yeah, and being a source of information and knowledge for them too. Hey, this is how we're thinking about this thing. This is how we're working here. Can we be thought partners, and really use that relationship building that, it's such an overused concept, but I'm interested when there's actual partnership there, when it's not just, hey, I need this from you, you need this from me, let's just do the thing.
And we are kind of an interesting space in terms of the fundraising landscape, right? We're not direct services, we're not strictly a performing arts organization, we're not strictly arts education either, in that we don't work a lot with schools for now. We don't have a ton of formal after school programs. We kind of sit in this area between community organizing and folk arts center / concert venue, and it's / dance, Latin dance club,
and the humanities,
and this humanities thing. Yeah, and so I think just trying to straddle all of those and communicate we move among and between all of these spaces.
And that's a value.
And it's a value,
right? We don't have to choose. That's also something that is, that should be our power, right? You shouldn't make us choose, or you shouldn't make us do more direct service because that's the thing that philanthropists are funding more. We need to get to a place where we can be ourselves in the job that we do best. And there's the trust to allow for that work to continue.
What would you like Blue Heart members in closing to know? What do you want to leave us with?
I think I'll just wrap up on a personal note and say that, to be candid, it's been quite a ride being a small nonprofit, BIPOC women run and led arts and cultural center these last few years. It has really been a ride. I think we've really been at the center of all of these structural and historical circumstances that are implicating people not only across the arts and social justice sectors, but really all of our communities. So we've felt that, and we're all really excited to be here and to continue growing our programs, and I say that with a lot of love, and I'm gonna cry. This is a place where the staff as well continues to find home, and we're really excited to keep bringing that energy to our communities and keep turn this institution from the sort of grassroots scrappy beginnings from that part of the chapter into the next phase of really taking us into the matriarch phase of our organization.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's beautiful. And what I wanted to say, something that I mentioned in a different conversation I was having a couple weeks ago, that at least to me, and I hope it's not only my experience, I know that it's not only my experience, I think La Peña has given me so much clarity in the midst of so much distraction that we are just we're in a world where it's really hard to trust our role in society at all times. I feel within friends, within colleagues, within community members, there's so much doubt of am I doing the thing that I should be doing? Am I having a relationship with the right people? Am I reading the right news? Am I giving my money to where my money should go. Like there's just so much doubt about how do we impact the world in the way that we want. And I think La Peña to me is a grounding space where we get reminded like, oh yeah, this is what I should be doing. This is the people that I should have in my life. This is what I should focus on. And to me today especially, that is like invaluable, to have a place that just takes away all of that noise and kind of like makes us being focused in what really matters, you know. And I mean, at the end, it really is about like that sense of partnership and belonging that we feel among the team with the people that we serve, and you know, like seeing volunteers becoming friends, and then like having a project together, and then doing that project at La Peña, or getting married at La Peña, or like you know, like all these things that are just like part of that ecosystem that hey, these people know what their people is, and they know that how they can replicate that, you know, like again, that's the educational part. So to me, that is what I would like for people to understand about La Peña, like the most. Like if anything, if you never come to an event, you don't know any of our musicians, doesn't matter. Like I think the main thing is like people get clarity here. Like we're don't bullshit anybody. Like what happens here is really important, and I think people can feel it.
Thank you so much for your beautiful work and all this perspective sharing.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.